It took nearly 6 years following the conviction of Nicola Sacco and Bartolomeo Vanzetti for the murders of Frederick Parmenter and Alessandro Berardelli for the men to be sentenced for their purported crimes. On April 9, 1927, nearly 7 years after the actual murders had occurred, Judge Webster Thayer sentenced Sacco and Vanzetti to die in the electric chair. By the time Thayer pronounced that sentence, the men's case had already ceased to be that of people accused of committing a garden-variety payroll robbery in Massachusetts. It had become, as Sacco and Vanzetti lawyer Fred Moore would state, the pivot around which class struggle in America is to swing. Moore, a radical lawyer, had done everything he could to cast Sacco and Vanzetti as martyrs to the cause of organized labor. Working people in America rallied to their defense, believing the men's prosecution to be a culminating event in a broader class struggle in the United States. So too did intellectuals and writers like Upton Sinclair, author of the famed work The Jungle, who also wrote a book on the Sacco and Vanzetti case. Sinclair cast Sacco and Vanzetti as childlike idealists whose only offense was to believe in a better world. Many Americans understood the crimes for which the men were being prosecuted not as murder, but rather as being foreign and having the nerve to challenge the prevailing class structures and political hierarchies of the United States. Shortly before Judge Thayer pronounced the death sentence, Sacco and Vanzetti themselves embraced this narrative in their remarks before the court. In a famous courtroom speech delivered in characteristically broken English, Vanzetti proclaimed his innocence of any crime, and declared that he and Sacco were victims of a biased court. Vanzetti, defiant, declared,
"I am suffering because I am a radical, and indeed I am a radical. I have suffered because I was an Italian, and indeed I am an Italian. I have suffered more for my family and for my beloved than for myself. But I am so convinced to be right that you can only kill me once, but if you could execute me 2 times, and if I could be reborn 2 other times, I will live again to do what I have done already."
Because of the transnational orientation of 20th century labor movements and radical political movements, the image of Sacco and Vanzetti as victims in the class struggle quickly took hold internationally. The period following the men's conviction in 1921 witnessed protests break out in London, Rome, and Paris. In Le Havre, France, bright red posters denouncing the verdict as unjust appeared throughout the city. In Santiago, Chile, 3,000 workers marched through the streets denouncing capitalism and demanding that Sacco and Vanzetti be freed. In some European cities, U.S. consulates requested extra security after being subjected to death threats. American embassies in Lisbon, Portugal, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, Zurich, Switzerland, and Marseille, France, were all bombed within days of each other. After requests for retrials for Sacco and Vanzetti were denied and the death sentence was pronounced, residents of cities around Europe and Latin America joined their U.S. neighbors in protests and expression of solidarity with Sacco and Vanzetti. The American minister in Venezuela wrote of Sacco and Vanzetti, "Practically all the lower classes regarded them as martyrs." The image of Sacco and Vanzetti as martyrs and innocent men persecuted for their ethnicity and radicalism has endured both in the United States and internationally in the century after their deaths. But to what extent does this image reflect the reality of their case? Were Sacco and Vanzetti guilty of the crimes for which they were accused? Why has this question endured, and why has it proven so challenging to answer? Moreover, how much does the answer to this question matter to evaluating the historical significance and ramifications of this case?